Alright guys, so this is going to be our fifth and final part in our Gameology series on open world game design, so be sure you check out parts 1 through 4 before you watch this video. Okay, so in our last video we talked about the dangers of checklist syndrome, which is which refers to open world game design that relies mostly on repetitive, tedious side missions to create density as opposed to relying on good old-fashioned game design. And at the end of that video, I talked about the importance of making sure that when you're making an open world game, that it's fun to actually be out in the open world. And the reason I bring this up is because it, speaks to a bigger issue with a lot of recent open world games, and that's the fact that a lot of them just don't really need to be open world, because a lot of game franchises that have been predominantly linear in their lifetime have started going open world. Metro did it, Halo did it, Sonic did it, and as I was playing a lot of these games, I said to myself, did this really need to be open world? And the conclusion I came to was no, because the best parts of those games were when, they were playing like a linear game. So I feel like that's something that a lot of developers need to consider when they're making a game, because if, you don't do open world gameplay very well, then what's the point of making an open world game to begin with? So how you can kind of tell that something doesn't need to be open world is if, when you're out in the open world, between the side missions and everything, you start to get bored. A really famous example of that is Far Cry 2. This game is often referred to as Far Drive 2, because a lot of the downtime between missions is simply driving from point A to point B on the map. And there often isn't much to do during these ports of the game outside of, occasionally stopping to fight off enemies. Very little happens in the open world as you're playing this. Now, a lot of people are going to say that that's a necessary evil of open world game design, and that there's a very easy solution. Just put a fast travel system in the game. And this is also a design principle that I openly disagree with, because if you need to rely on a fast travel system in order to, get to the good points of the game, then your game probably doesn't need to be open world. And to illustrate this point, I want to talk again about Marvel's Spider-Man. Marvel's Spider-Man has a fast travel system in it, but every time I play Spider-Man, I never use the fast travel system, and the reason for that is very simple. Getting around the map is just so much fun. The web swinging in Spider-Man is just so much fun. It's stimulating, it's fun to bounce across the rooftops, let yourself drop and then use that momentum to pick up speed. It's just such a well-designed traversal mechanic, and that also justifies the open world being so big too. And there's more to it than that. As you're swinging around, crimes will be in progress. You can stop to, deal with petty crooks and everything like that. Get that real superhero experience. It always feels like, even when you're not doing the main missions, you're still playing a game. You're living out that fantasy of being a superhero. And while it can get slightly repetitive, because you're still getting to the story mission so fast, that repetitive nature never gets to set in. And that's why I think for open world games, superheroes tend to be a good fit for that, because there's usually a fun way of traversal that's included in there, be it the web swinging in Spider-Man, gliding and or driving around the Batmobile in Batman Arkham Knight, shoulder charging through traffic and Hulk Ultimate Destruction. That's part of why superhero games work so well for open world design. But what if you don't have a superhero to play as in your open world game? Well, just making the world feel alive can also do wonders for the experience. A really good example, in my experience, is Red Dead Redemption. So, getting around the map in Red Dead Redemption is very basic. You're just riding from point A to point B on your horse, and given the barren nature of the setting, you would think that would get really boring really quick. But in Red Dead Redemption, it has a random encounter system. So as you're making your way across the desert, any variety of things can happen. You can be ambushed, you'll find lawmen chasing criminals that you can help out. While you're in town, people can get attacked, you can intervene if you want. A lot can happen in Red Dead Redemption, and because of that, it's fun getting from point A to point B, and it really immerses you in that Wild West setting. Not to mention, there's other stuff to be doing out in the open world. There's animals to hunt, there is a treasure to seek out. Occasionally you'll come across someone who needs help storming a fort or something. And it all happens organically too. And as you're doing all that, you're right into town. Like, it's too late to do one of the story missions, so you stop at the saloon, play a little bit of poker, you wake up, you find there's a bounty that's available, so you seek that out. Then the story mission is available. You know, you just role play in the game, and again, that prevents the repetitiveness of it setting in. Now, a lot of people might still not understand what I'm saying about this in regards to whether or not games need to be open world. And to close out this argument, I'm going to talk about Ghost of Tsushima. Now, I want to state for the record, Ghost of Tsushima is a fantastic game. The combat, the stealth mechanics, the range, the melee combat, like, it's all really good. It's one of Sucker Punch's best games. But there is one weakness with the game, and that is the open world. There is very little to do in the open world of Ghost of Tsushima. You're just going from point A to point B, often in a straight line because, you know, there isn't much in the way of elevation or anything like that to make getting from point A to point B that interesting. It just gets dull really, really quick. And as I was finishing Ghost of Tsushima, I said to myself, did this really need to be open world? Couldn't this have worked better if it was like a Hitman game? Where instead of it being strictly open world, it's more like you have these great big open levels and then you have to complete objectives within them. And every time I bring that up to people who have played the game and we're discussing it, they always stop to consider it. And I pretty much think that I'm correct in that. Ghost of Tsushima probably would have been better if it used a level-to-level system, especially considering that all the open world stuff that Sucker Punch intended to do with it, you know, try to make an open world game that didn't have waypoints. There's a waypoint right there. You failed, so what was the point of it? So yeah, Ghost of Tsushima would have been better if it wasn't open world, and that's really what I want a lot of developers to take away from this video specifically. Don't make an open world game and assume you're being innovative. If the game would be better linear, just make a linear game. If it would be better as a level-to-level game, just make it a level-to-level game. It's okay not to be open world. That doesn't make your game dated or anything like that. Just make the game the way it's supposed to be. And again, if it works the way it was without being open world before, don't try to force it, because, you know, games like Sonic Frontiers and stuff like that, they really show how detrimental that design philosophy can be. Games do not need to go open world in order to evolve. But anyway, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on open world game design. Now, a lot of people might be saying, what about, you know, stuff like combat? But the thing is, that can vary tremendously in open world game design. I've played open world games that focus on melee combat. I've seen open world games that focus on, you know, first-person shooting, third-person shooting. And that really comes down to more game design in specific genres. So that's going to be a more discussion when I get to something like first-person shooters. Same goes for progression systems. That might be a more broad topic to talk about in a single video rather than a full Gameology series on that. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts on what I think makes for a good open world game. And to close out this Gameology series on open world game design, I am going to do a little top 10 list of my favorite open world games and why I think they are the best the genre has to offer. So stay tuned for that one, and I'll see you guys then.